My sister made my life miserable. Now she's carrying my husband's baby. And after years of betrayal, she thought she'd won everything. But when our parents cut her out of the will, she came to the one person she never expected to need me. I'm going to tell you something that might sound familiar, but I promise the ending will surprise you. My name is Maya, and for most of my life, I believed I was the problem in my family. You know how some families have that one kid who can do no wrong? Well, that was my younger sister, Lily. And I was the one who apparently could do nothing right. Looking back now, I can see how twisted everything really was. But when you're living it, when it's your normal, you don't question why your parents light up when one daughter walks into the room and barely acknowledge the other. Lily was born when I was 7, and from day one, she was treated like a precious miracle. Maybe it was because she was the baby. Or maybe because she had these big green eyes and blonde curls that made strangers stop my mother on the street to compliment her beautiful daughter. Me, I had boring brown hair and brown eyes, and I was always too serious, too independent, too much of everything that apparently wasn't charming. While I spent my afternoons doing homework at the kitchen table, Lily would curl up on Dad's lap watching cartoons. While I helped Mom with dishes, Lily would be getting her nails painted or having her hair braided. I learned early that love in our house was conditional and scarce, so I decided to earn it through achievement. I became the responsible one, the straight A student, the daughter who never asked for anything because I knew the answer would probably be no anyway. Lily became the princess who only had to bat her eyelashes to get whatever she wanted. Maya, why can't you be more like your sister, Mom would say when I'd express any need or want. Lily is so sweet and easygoing. Sweet? That's what they all thought. But even at 7 years old, I could see something in Lily's eyes when adults weren't looking. Something cold and calculating that made my stomach twist with an anxiety I couldn't name yet. By the time she was 5 and I was 12, the dynamic was set in stone. She was the golden child, and I was the reliable one who existed to make everyone else's life easier. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I didn't need their approval. But deep down, that little girl in me kept wondering what I had done wrong to deserve so little of my parents' love and why my sister seemed to get so much without even trying. I had no idea that the worst was yet to come, or that this favoritism would eventually create a monster who would try to destroy everything I'd worked so hard to build. The signs were all there from the beginning, but nobody wanted to see them. Not even me. The first time I realized Lily wasn't the sweet angel everyone believed her to be, I was 13 and she was 6. I came home from school to find my diary ripped apart, pages scattered across my bedroom floor like confetti. When I ran, crying to Mom, Lily was right behind me with crocodile tears, claiming she'd been looking for crayons and accidentally knocked it off my desk. "I'm sorry, Maya," she wailed, throwing her arms around Mom's legs. "I didn't mean to." Mom melted instantly, scooping Lily up and shooting me a disapproving look. "It's just a diary, Mia. Don't make such a big deal about it. She's just a little girl." But I had seen Lily's face for just a split second before she started crying. She'd been smiling, actually smiling. That's when the real torment began. She'd go through my backpack when I wasn't looking, sometimes taking my homework or throwing away my lunch. When I'd complain, she'd deny it with such convincing innocence that even I started doubting myself. "Maybe you forgot to pack it," Mom would suggest. "You're getting so absent-minded lately." The food sabotage was particularly cruel. Lily discovered I was lactose intolerant before I did, slipping milk into my orange juice or cheese into my sandwiches. Then watching with fascination as I double over with stomach cramps. "Poor Maya is sick again," she'd announce to anyone who'd listen, her voice dripping with fake concern. My belongings became casualties in her war against me. My favorite sweater would mysteriously develop holes. My books would go missing right before important tests. My alarm clock would be unplugged so I'd oversleep and get in trouble. Every single incident had an explanation that made Lily look innocent and me look careless. The worst part was how she'd weaponize other kids against me. She had this gift for manipulation that was terrifying in someone so young. She'd tell kids at school that I said mean things about them, or she'd share embarrassing stories about me that she'd overheard at home. Soon, I found myself friendless and isolated with a reputation as the weird girl with family problems. "Why don't you have any friends over anymore?" Dad asked one day, and I wanted to scream that it was because his precious daughter had systematically destroyed every potential friendship I'd tried to build. Instead, I just shrugged and said, "I prefer studying." "See?" Mom said, like this proved something. "Maya's always been antisocial. Lily makes friends everywhere she goes." Of course she did. But at home, when it was just us, she'd corner me and whisper things that made my blood run cold. "Nobody likes you," she'd say with that sweet smile. Mom and Dad wish I was their only daughter. I'll never forget the smell of burning hair and the look of pure hatred in my sister's eyes the day everything changed forever. I was 15, Lily was 8, and I was getting ready for my first real date. Tommy Rodriguez had finally asked me to the school dance, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely happy about something. I'd saved up my babysitting money to buy a dress, and I was curling my hair in the bathroom, humming softly to myself. That's when Lily appeared in the doorway holding Dad's lighter. "You look stupid," she said, her voice flat and cold. "Tommy's going to laugh at you." I ignored her, focusing on my reflection. I'd learned that engaging with her only made things worse. But ignoring her was apparently the wrong choice too, because the next thing I knew, she'd lunged forward and flicked the lighter right near my hair. The flame caught the ends of my curls instantly. I screamed and jumped back frantically, patting at my hair while the acrid smell filled the bathroom. In the mirror, I could see a chunk of my hair was singed off, leaving an uneven burned mess on the right side of my head. "Lily," I shrieked, but she was already running down the hallway shouting, "Daddy, Maya's yelling at me again." But this time, Dad had heard my scream. This time he came running and found me standing in the bathroom with burned hair and tears streaming down my face, holding the evidence, his lighter that definitely hadn't been in the bathroom before. "What happened?" he demanded, looking between us. "She tried to set my hair on fire," I said, my voice shaking. Lily immediately burst into tears. "I didn't mean to. I was just playing." She grabbed the lighter from me and it went too close. "And I'm sorry. I'm sorry." For a moment, I thought this would be like all the other times. I thought Dad would comfort her and tell me not to be so dramatic. But something in his face was different. Maybe it was the smell of burned hair that couldn't be denied. Maybe it was the way I was trembling. Maybe it was finally seeing physical evidence of what his younger daughter was capable of. "Lily," he said quietly, and his voice had an edge I'd never heard before. "Tell me exactly what happened." "I already did," she wailed, but her crying sounded different now, desperate instead of manipulative. Dad looked at the lighter in my hand, then at my burned hair, then at Lily's face. For the first time in my life, I saw doubt creep into his expression when he looked at his golden child. "This stops now," he said, and I wasn't sure if he was talking to her or to himself. "Lily, go to your room. We'll discuss this after I take care of your sister." Dad kept his word. Within a week, I was enrolled in a kickboxing class at Morrison's Martial Arts Academy downtown. At first, I was terrified and awkward, the only teenage girl in a class full of confident adults who seemed to know exactly what they were doing. But something magical happened after about a month. My body started remembering what it felt like to be strong. My mind began to quiet the constant anxiety that had become my default state. For the first time in years, I had somewhere to channel all the anger and frustration I'd been carrying around. Sensei Kim became like a second father to me. He was this quietly intense man who never raised his voice, but commanded complete respect from everyone in the room. He taught me that strength wasn't about being the biggest or the loudest. It was about being centered, confident, and unafraid. "Power comes from within," he'd say during our meditation sessions. "Nobody can take it from you unless you let them." At home, the dynamic was shifting. Lily couldn't figure out why her usual tactics weren't working on me anymore. When she'd try to corner me with her whispered threats, I'd look her straight in the eye with a calmness that clearly unnerved her. The real test came 3 months into my training. I was in my room doing homework when I heard her rifling through my backpack in the hallway. This was nothing new. She'd been stealing my lunch money for years, and I'd learned to hide most of my cash in different places. But that day she found my emergency $20 bill, the one I kept for genuine emergencies. "Give it back, Lily," I said from my doorway, my voice steady and calm. She looked up at me with that familiar defiant smirk, crumpling the bill in her fist. "Make me." For 8 years, I'd walked away from moments like this. I'd complained to parents who didn't listen, tried to reason with someone who had no interest in reason, and ultimately just accepted that I was powerless against her. But something was different now. I could feel the strength in my legs, the control in my breathing, the quiet confidence that months of training had built in me. "I'm asking you nicely one more time," I said. "Give me back my money." "Or what?" she taunted, taking a step closer. "You'll cry to Daddy again." She reached out to shove me like she'd done 100 times before, but this time I was ready. I caught her wrist gently but firmly, applying just enough pressure to stop her movement without hurting her. The look of shock on her face was priceless. For the first time in her life, someone had physically stopped her from doing exactly what she wanted. "I don't want to hurt you," I said quietly, "but I'm not going to let you hurt me anymore either." When Lily couldn't physically intimidate me anymore, she adapted her strategy like a predator learning new hunting techniques. The direct attacks stopped, but they were replaced by something much more insidious. A cold, calculated campaign designed to make me feel invisible and worthless in my own home. She'd give me the silent treatment for weeks at a time, acting like I simply didn't exist. When forced to acknowledge my presence, she'd use this tone of voice that somehow managed to convey complete disgust without actually saying anything offensive enough for our parents to notice. "Could you pass the salt?" she'd ask at dinner, but the way she said it made it sound like I was some kind of contamination she was forced to interact with. She became a master of backhanded compliments delivered in front of our parents. "Maya's so lucky she doesn't care about how she looks," she'd say sweetly. I wish I could be that confident about being plain. Mom would laugh and ruffle Lily's hair. "You're terrible," she'd say fondly, like it was cute instead of cruel. But here's the thing about bullies who can't break you anymore. They start losing their power, and that desperation becomes obvious to everyone around them. I was done reacting to her provocations, done trying to defend myself, done caring whether she liked me or not. Instead, I threw myself into my studies with a focus that surprised even me. I joined debate team, volunteered at the local library, and spent my evenings working on scholarship applications. Every hour I spent building my future was an hour I didn't have to spend thinking about my toxic home life. My junior year, Mrs. Patterson, my guidance counselor, called me into her office with news that would change everything. "Maya, I have something exciting to tell you," she said, barely containing her enthusiasm. "You've been awarded the Harrison Academic Scholarship to State University, full tuition, room and board, plus a stipend for books." I stared at her, not quite processing what she was saying. "Full scholarship, full ride," she confirmed. "4 years completely paid for as long as you maintain a 3.5 GPA. Maya, this scholarship is incredibly competitive. They only give out 3 per year in the entire state." That night at dinner, I shared the news with my family. Dad's face lit up with genuine pride. "Maya, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you." Mom seemed pleased but distracted. "That's wonderful, honey. Will you still be able to come home on weekends to help with things around here?" But it was Lily's reaction that told me everything I needed to know. For just a moment, her carefully constructed mask slipped, and I saw pure rage flash across her face. Not disappointment or sadness that I'd be leaving. Rage that I was succeeding. In 8 months, I'd be free. College was like stepping into an alternate universe where I could reinvent myself completely. Nobody at State University knew about my complicated family dynamics or my years of being the family scapegoat. For the first time in my life, I could just be Maya. I threw myself into campus life with the enthusiasm of someone making up for lost time. I joined the photography club, volunteered at the campus women's center, and actually made friends, real friends who enjoyed my company and sought me out just because they liked being around me. It was during my sophomore year that I met James at a study group for advanced statistics. He was this quiet, thoughtful guy majoring in engineering with kind eyes and a smile that made my stomach flutter every time he looked at me. What struck me most was how genuinely interested he seemed in what I had to say. Our first date was to a tiny coffee shop off campus where we talked for 4 hours straight about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up as the middle child in a family of 5 kids, about his dream to design sustainable housing, about his fear of heights despite wanting to build skyscrapers. I found myself opening up to him in ways I'd never done with anyone. I told him about my scholarship, my love for photography, my complicated relationship with my family, though I kept the worst details to myself. Some stories were too heavy for second dates. "You're different from other girls I've known," he said as he walked me back to my dorm. "You're so independent and strong, like you know exactly who you are." James and I became inseparable over the next few months. He was patient and gentle in ways I'd never experienced, treating me like I was precious instead of an inconvenience. When I told him about my martial arts training, he didn't seem intimidated. Instead, he asked if I'd teach him some basic moves. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. During spring semester of my junior year, I realized I was late. Not just a few days late, 2 weeks late with symptoms I couldn't ignore anymore. The pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines that changed everything in an instant. I sat on my dorm room floor, staring at the test, feeling my carefully planned future crumbling around me. I'd worked so hard to escape my chaotic family life to build something stable and predictable. And now this. When I told James, I watched his face go through every emotion. Shock, fear, worry, and finally determination. "We'll figure this out," he said, taking my hands in his. "Whatever you want to do, we'll figure it out together." "I don't know what I want," I admitted. "I never planned for this to happen now." "I know," he said softly. "But Maya, I love you. I've been trying to work up the courage to tell you that for weeks. If you want to keep this baby, I want to do this with you. I want to marry you." The first betrayal happened when Emma was 6 months old. I found the text messages on James's phone completely by accident. I'd grabbed it instead of mine from the counter when Emma's pediatrician called and the screen lit up with a notification that made my blood freeze. Last night was incredible. When can I see you again, Rebecca? I stood there in our tiny kitchen holding our fussy baby while staring at words that shattered my world. Rebecca was a girl from his engineering program, someone he'd mentioned casually a few times as a study partner. When James came home that evening, I was sitting at our small dining table with his phone placed in the center like evidence in a courtroom. "We need to talk," I said, and something in my voice made him go completely pale. He didn't try to deny it. I have to give him credit for that. He sat down across from me, put his head in his hands, and told me everything. It had been going on for 3 weeks. He was stressed about money, about school, about being a father so young, and she'd been there offering an escape from all the responsibility. "It meant nothing," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Maya, I swear to you, it meant absolutely nothing. I love you. I love Emma. I never wanted this to happen. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to throw things. I wanted to take Emma and walk out that door and never look back. But I also knew that single parenthood would mean dropping out of school, giving up my career plans, possibly moving back home, back to the toxic environment I'd fought so hard to escape. So I made a choice that I'm still not sure was right or wrong. I chose to forgive him. This never happens again," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "Not ever. If you want to leave, leave now. But if you stay, you're choosing this family completely." He promised. He swore. He went to counseling. He deleted social media accounts and changed study groups and did everything right for the next 2 years until he didn't. Emma was almost 3 when I discovered the second affair. This time, it was his supervisor at his new job, a woman 10 years older who'd been mentoring him. I found out when she called our house at midnight, drunk and crying, begging him to leave me for her. "Maya, I can explain," he said when I confronted him, but his explanations were starting to sound like rehearsed scripts. This time, I was angrier, less willing to accept his remorse. "How am I supposed to trust you again? How am I supposed to believe anything you say? Because I'll prove it to you," he said desperately. "However long it takes, I'll prove that you and Emma are everything to me." Again, I chose to stay. Again, I chose to believe in rebuilding what we'd had. Maybe I was naive. Or maybe I was just terrified of being a single mother struggling to make ends meet. The confession came on a Tuesday night in March, 7 years into our marriage. While I was loading the dishwasher after Emma's bedtime, James had been acting strange for weeks, distracted, guilty jumping every time his phone rang. I'd started to wonder if we were headed for betrayal number 3, but I never could have prepared for what he actually told me. "Maya, we need to talk," he said. And those 4 words sent ice through my veins because I'd heard them before in this exact context. I dried my hands slowly, trying to prepare myself for another confession about another coworker or college friend. But when I turned around, James looked more destroyed than I'd ever seen him. "Sit down," he said. "Just tell me," I said. "Who is it this time?" The pause that followed lasted an eternity. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "It's Lily." For a moment, my brain couldn't process what he'd said. "What do you mean it's Lily, your sister?" "Maya, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you like this." The kitchen floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "You're having an affair with my sister. It started 6 months ago when she came to visit for Christmas," he said, words tumbling out like he'd been rehearsing this speech. "She was going through a hard time and we were just talking, and somehow it just happened." 6 months. The number hit me like a physical blow. "You've been sleeping with my sister for 6 months. Maya, please let me explain." 6 months, I repeated, sinking onto a kitchen chair. All those family dinners. All those times she hugged me and asked about Emma and acted like she cared about our family. She was sleeping with my husband. James was crying now. Ugly, desperate tears that I felt nothing for. "There's more," he whispered. I laughed. Actually laughed because what more could there possibly be? What more could there possibly be, James? She's pregnant. The world stopped spinning. Everything went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own heart breaking into pieces so small they'd never be put back together. "Pregnant," I repeated. "We don't know. I mean, we're not sure if it's mine or what." My voice was deadly calm now. The same tone I'd used with Lily when I'd finally learned to fight back. She was seeing someone else around the same time, but Maya, the timing, it could be mine. I stared at this man I'd built my life around, the father of my daughter, the person I'd forgiven twice before for breaking my trust. And I realized that all of it, the apologies, the counseling, the promises, had been lies. He wasn't sorry he'd betrayed me. He was sorry he'd gotten caught. Get out, I said quietly. It took me 3 weeks to work up the courage to call my parents. 3 weeks of telling Emma that Daddy was on an extended business trip. 3 weeks of crying myself to sleep after she went to bed. 3 weeks of planning exactly how to handle the conversation. That would change everything. I knew I had to be strategic about this. Lily had spent our entire lives manipulating situations to make herself look like the victim. And I couldn't just call up screaming accusations without proof. But I also knew her well enough to predict exactly how she'd react when confronted. So I set a trap. I called Mom on a Saturday afternoon when I knew Dad would be home too, and asked them to put me on speakerphone for a family discussion. Of course, sweetheart. Mom said, "Is everything okay? You sound stressed." Actually, no. Everything isn't okay. I began carefully. James and I are having some serious problems, and I need to talk to you about Lily's involvement. There was a pause. Lily's involvement, Dad asked. What does Lily have to do with your marriage? Well, that's what I'm hoping you can help me understand, I said, keeping my voice neutral. James told me that she's been calling him a lot lately, and Emma mentioned seeing her at our house when I wasn't there. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on. This was partially true. Emma had mentioned seeing Aunt Lily's car in our driveway one afternoon when she came home from school early, though at the time I'd assumed she was mistaken. Oh, honey, Mom said with that dismissive tone I knew so well. You know how Lily is. She probably just wanted to help with whatever problems you two were having. She's always cared so much about your happiness. Right, I said. That's why I thought maybe we should call her now and get her side of the story. Clear the air. Would you mind calling her and asking her to join this conversation? Of course, Dad said. Hold on. I heard them conferencing Lily and my heart pounding as I waited for her voice. Maya, she said, sounding surprised but not panicked. Mom said you wanted to talk about James. Is everything okay? I'm hoping you can help me understand that, I replied. James mentioned that you two have been talking a lot lately. Well, yeah, she said, and I could practically hear her calculating her response. He seemed really stressed about work and money, and I just wanted to help. I mean, you're my sister. Your happiness matters to me. That's so sweet of you, I said, loading my voice with fake gratitude. And it was really thoughtful of you to come by the house to check on Emma when I was working late. There was the tiniest pause. Oh, that. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure she was okay. Of course. And James appreciated the support, I'm sure, especially during this difficult time with everything he's been dealing with. What do you mean? Lily asked. And now there was a slight edge to her voice. The aftermath of that phone call was swift and brutal. Dad hung up on Lily mid-sentence when she started blaming me for stealing James's affection in the first place. Within an hour, he'd called me back with a shakiness in his voice I'd never heard before. Maya, I need you to know how sorry I am, he said. For everything. For not protecting you when you were kids. For not seeing what she really was. For letting this happen to your family. The changes came faster than I expected. By the end of that week, my parents had consulted with their estate attorney and completely rewritten their will. Lily's inheritance, her trust fund, her emergency credit card access. Everything was revoked. We should have done this years ago. Mom admitted as we sat in my kitchen while Emma played in the backyard. We enabled her behavior by always bailing her out, always making excuses. We created this monster. Meanwhile, I'd filed for divorce and demanded a paternity test as part of the proceedings. James's lawyer tried to argue that it was premature since the baby wasn't born yet, but my attorney was relentless. We need to establish paternity for child support and custody purposes, and she explained to the judge. My client has a right to know if her husband has fathered a child with her sister. The prenatal paternity test results came back 6 weeks later, and they confirmed what I'd already known in my heart. James was the father. Seeing it in black and white on the lab report felt like being stabbed all over again, but it also meant I could move forward with complete clarity. James tried to reach out several times during this period, sending long emails about how sorry he was and how he wanted to work things out. I forwarded them all to my lawyer without reading past the first few lines. There was nothing he could say that would change what he'd done or who he'd chosen to do it with. The divorce proceedings were messy but straightforward. James didn't fight me on custody. He'd have Emma every other weekend and one evening per week. He didn't fight me on the house. I'd keep it and refinance it in my name only. He didn't fight me on alimony. He'd pay it monthly until Emma turned 18. What he did fight me on was his relationship with Lily. It's complicated, Maya, he said during one of our few face-to-face conversations at the lawyer's office. She's carrying my child. I have to think about what's best for the baby. What's best for the baby, I replied coldly, is having a father who doesn't abandon his responsibilities when things get difficult. But based on your track record, I'm not holding my breath. Lily, meanwhile, was spiraling, was with her financial safety net gone and her family relationships destroyed. She was facing the reality of single motherhood without the support system she'd always taken for granted. She'd been working part-time at a boutique, barely making enough to cover her rent. And now she was pregnant and essentially homeless. 3 months after James moved out, I got a text from him that I almost deleted without reading. Lily had the baby. It's a boy. His name is Michael. I thought you should know. The call came 4 months after the divorce was finalized on a rainy Thursday evening while I was helping Emma with her homework. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer it anyway. Maya. The voice was so broken and small that it took me a moment to realize it was Lily. How did you get this number? I got a new phone. Maya. Please don't hang up. I know you hate me, and I know I deserve it, but I need to talk to you. I walked into the kitchen out of Emma's earshot. What do you want, Lily? I'm in trouble, she said, and I could hear crying in the background, a baby crying. Real trouble. I got evicted last month. I'm staying at this horrible motel and I don't have money for another week. Michael is sick and I can't afford to take him to the doctor and I don't know what to do. I felt nothing. No sympathy, no sisterly concern, nothing but cold detachment. That sounds difficult. Maya, please. I know I destroyed everything between us. I know I ruined your marriage and hurt you in the worst possible way, but I'm begging you, not for me, but for Michael. He's innocent in all this. Is James helping you? There was a bitter laugh. James moved to Denver for a new job. He sends $300 a month in child support, which barely covers diapers and formula. He's seen Michael twice since he was born. I see. Maya, I'm desperate. I've been calling mom and dad for weeks, but they won't even take my calls. I tried to go to their house, but they had the locks changed. I have no one left. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lily, who had spent her entire life destroying my relationships and undermining my happiness, was now alone and asking for help from the sister whose life she'd systematically ruined. What exactly are you asking me for? Just a loan, she said quickly. Enough to get into an apartment and pay the first month's rent. Maybe $2,000. I'll pay you back as soon as I get on my feet. I'm looking for work, but it's hard with the baby. And most places won't hire someone without a permanent address. $2,000. About half of what James paid me in monthly alimony. Money I could easily afford to give her. Money that would solve her immediate crisis. Please, Maya, I'm begging you. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but Michael does. He's your nephew. He's Emma's brother. Half-brother, I corrected automatically. Right, half-brother. But still family. Family. The word that had been used to excuse Lily's behavior for 24 years. Family. Which apparently meant I was supposed to forgive anything and help anyone no matter how much they'd hurt me. Maya, are you still there? I'm here. So will you help us? Just this once. I swear I'll never ask you for anything again. I thought about 7-year-old me finding my diary torn apart. I thought about 14-year-old me watching my sister smile as I doubled over in pain from the milk she'd secretly added to my food. I thought about 15-year-old me with my hair on fire and my sister holding the lighter. I thought about my wedding day and Lily hugging me and telling me how happy she was for me. I thought about Christmas dinner, Lily playing with Emma while planning to seduce my husband. I thought about 6 months of betrayal, 6 months of looking me in the eye and pretending to care about my family while she was actively destroying it. Maya, please. I'm not asking you to forgive me or have a relationship with me. I just need help getting back on my feet so I can take care of my son. No, I said quietly. What? No, I won't help you. I won't give you money. I won't co-sign an apartment lease. I won't provide references for jobs. I won't do anything to make your life easier. But Maya, you made your choices. You're Lily, you chose to pursue my husband. You chose to have an affair behind my back. You chose to get pregnant. You chose to destroy my marriage and break up Emma's family. Now you get to live with the consequences of those choices. I can't believe you're being this cruel. After everything we've been through, I interrupted. You mean everything you put me through, 24 years of psychological torture culminating in you sleeping with my husband and having his baby. That's what we've been through, Lily. I hung up and blocked the number immediately. The cycle was finally broken. 5 months later, I was sitting in my boss's office accepting a promotion to regional marketing director with a 40% salary increase. Emma was thriving in her new school, making friends and excelling in her art classes. Our house felt like a home again instead of a crime scene. You've really turned things around this year, Patricia said as she handed me the promotion paperwork. Your campaign strategies have been innovative, and your leadership skills have impressed everyone on the executive team. That evening, I called Dad to share the news. Maya, that's wonderful. His voice was warm with genuine pride. You've worked so hard to rebuild your life. Your mother and I are so proud of how you've handled everything. We talked for an hour about Emma's school progress, my new job responsibilities, and their plans to visit for Thanksgiving. It felt good to have a normal relationship with my parents for the first time since childhood. I didn't ask about Lily, and Dad didn't offer any information. Later that week, I ran into Mrs. Gray from my old neighborhood at the grocery store. We'd always been friendly when James and I lived on Maple Street. Maya, how are you doing? I heard about the divorce. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. We're doing well. Actually, we're doing better than well. Good for you, she said, then lowered her voice conspiratorially. I don't know if you've heard, but your sister is living in those garden apartments on Oak Street now. The subsidized housing ones. I see her sometimes at the bus stop with a baby. She looks rough. I felt a flicker of something. Not quite satisfaction, but a sense of cosmic justice. I hope she's getting the help she needs, I said diplomatically. That night after Emma was asleep, I sat in my living room in my house, in my life that I'd built and rebuilt, and finally reclaimed, and thought about how far I'd come. Lily was struggling in subsidized housing with a baby and no support system, facing the consequences of her choices for the first time in her life. James was alone in Denver, having lost his family for a few months of excitement with someone who turned out to be more trouble than she was worth. My parents were working to rebuild their relationship with me while mourning the daughter they thought they knew. And me, I was thriving. I had a career, I loved a daughter who was happy and secure, parents who finally saw me clearly, and most importantly, I had peace, real peace, for the first time since childhood. Emma appeared in the living room doorway. Mom, are you happy now? She asked. The question caught me off guard. What do you mean, sweetheart? You seem different, lighter, I guess. Like you're not worried all the time anymore. Yes, Emma, I am happy now. Happier than I've been in a long time. I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply refusing to let someone else's toxicity poison your life anymore. It's setting boundaries and enforcing them. It's choosing your own happiness over other people's manipulation. Lily had spent 24 years trying to destroy me, and in the end, she'd only succeeded in destroying herself. The little girl who had once wondered why she wasn't loved enough had grown into a woman who knew her own worth. That was the real victory.